What's up, Dean family, Dean Nation? Today we're doing a reaction to In a Nutshell Kazoo Arts, and it's called Will Save Your Life Next Week. What's gonna save our life or your life or whoever life watching this video next week? Interesting. If you're new to the channel, like, comment, subscribe, and share the video on all social medias, and comment below what reaction you want to do next, and check out the original video in the description. My slow road to 100K million and bills. Click that subscribe button. Let's birthday as a family, as a nation. And no further ado, let's get into the reaction.
Let's save your life today, not long term, today, by specifically finding out what's most likely to kill you next week, so you can actually avoid it.
Okay.
First, let's assume that 3 million people will watch this video and that you're all among our typical viewers. You're between the ages of 15 and 35 and you're living in Western countries. We base this video on statistics specifically for your demographic and our own estimates. They're not perfect, but roughly correct. Don't worry, we might also save your life if you're older or live somewhere else. Okay, now let's gather all 3 million of you in 40 packed football stadiums. Look around. Most of you are teens and young adults. So much potential. Unfortunately, by the end of next week, 58 of you watching right now will not be alive anymore.
That's kind of
3,000 of you will sadly have passed in a year. That's 1 in 1,000. Or not.
Walmart Plus. It's Walmart Plus free delivery. Because cooking food is a lot more fun than shopping for it. It's Walmart.
We have passed in a year. That's 1 in 1,000. Or not. Today, we will save your, yes, your life by
best way to save your life is stop stress and eat right.
looking at the avoidable ways you might die. We'll not cover long-term things like diseases because we want to prevent your death next week. Your life consists of millions of micro-decisions, and some of you are on a path that will end soon. Can we guide you down a different path? Humans are incredibly bad at judging the real risks of life. Bad things happen to people all the time because there are so many of us. And since the news focuses so much on freak accidents, we have a completely distorted picture of what actually poses a danger to us. For example, the chance any of you are going to die in a terror attack is below 0.0002%.
Y'all don't stop doing Florida like that. Like, what the fuck?
There are super risky activities that are clearly insanely dangerous, like wingsuit flying. If all 3 million of you were to practice this sport, about 285 of you would die just next week. Then there are things that are pretty dangerous. If all of you rode a motorcycle, 35 of you would not survive next week.
But damn.
If you don't want this kind of risk in your life, well, don't do these things. It turns out what's most likely to kill you next week are things that feel safe, that you do all the time, and are routine, things you may even be really good at. This is what we'll prevent. By far the most dangerous thing you're currently doing is driving. 8 of you will die in a car crash just next week. 416 of you over the next year. Mostly because most of you are not aware what driving really is. You're zooming through the world in a metal torpedo at the speed of a cheetah or faster. In an average car that weighs 1.5 tons at roughly 60 kilometers an hour or 40 miles an hour, you have the mechanical energy of a piano dropped from the top of the Statue of Liberty. If you crash, this energy is released into your car and, more importantly, your body. 30% of deadly car accidents are caused by speeding, mostly because you overestimate yourself. But that will kill 2 of you next week. It's very straightforward. If you go fast, you have less time to react and only notice the danger when it's too late. A lot of you watching tend to go the speed limit regularly, which saves very little time. If your destination is 20 minutes away at 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles an hour, driving 15 kilometers an hour or 10 miles an hour faster will save less than 3 minutes.
Okay.
But your probability of a deadly crash increases by 60%.
You get that fast, but
So
your
2
chance
of you
of
may survive next week if you
up.
just tone down your speeding. This alone would eliminate the most dangerous activity in your life. Isn't this wild? A close second is drinking alcohol when driving, causing 25% of deadly crashes. In the next week, this will also kill 2 of you.
Shit,
You don't
maybe
even need to
more.
feel drunk.
The fuck?
You just have to have consumed enough to slow your reaction time. Even if you still feel completely in control, chances are high
That
that
shit
you're
sneak
not.
up on your ass and
Aside from
boom.
being extremely illegal, it's one of the most reckless and dangerous things too many people do regularly. And
Facts.
it's easy to avoid. Just don't do it, ever. Taking a cab after that work event next week, even if you only had 2 drinks, might save your life. Just because you were distracted while driving, one of you will die next week.
What damn.
Maybe because you were eating or fumbling with the radio.
That's the
but
worst
let's
way
be
to
real,
buy
probably because
eating,
you
my
were
guy.
reading your phone.
Fat ass, big
If you
fat
drive at
ass.
60 kilometers an hour or 40
Put the
miles an hour and
food
check your phone
down.
for just a moment, you've now crossed an entire football field, completely blind. Stop doing this, and you might survive next week. Lastly, we want to have an especially frank word with the 3 of you that will die because you didn't wear a seatbelt. What an incredibly stupid way to die young.
Fat.
Way more of you will get into a car crash and be injured for all the same reasons. And of course, often the victims of crashes are not to blame at all, and many of you watching right now will end up hurting someone else. But you now know how to reduce the chances of this happening massively. Let's move on to other deadly things that you can easily avoid. 26 of you will die by falling, or more precisely by hitting the ground in the next year, which means one of you will die every 2 weeks. You'd think the danger of
That's
height was not as
crazy.
big of a
People
deal, but it
dying
is. Going up
every day
ladders,
for
working
real.
on scaffolding or on a roof, and going hiking in nature is normal. But falling from a height of just 2 meters has about the same mechanical energy as a bowling ball dropped from a 7-story building. You probably wouldn't want to be hit by it, and it only gets worse the higher you go. For a fall from 5 meters, the height of a large ladder, the equivalent would be the energy of a bowling ball dropped from a 19-story building. But even just falling over can easily be fatal because your head is all the way at the top of your body. Another surprisingly dangerous thing is water. One of you will drown next week.
Wow.
Being in and around water is fun and doesn't seem to be a big deal, mainly for 3 reasons. You'll underestimate how dangerous a body of water is and be taken by strong currents or riptides. You'll overestimate your swimming abilities. You're most likely a much worse swimmer than you think. Or, also sadly common, you'll go into the water drunk, especially dangerous because you're more reckless and even more likely to be overwhelmed by a cold shock or hypothermia. Harmless situations around water turn deadly so quickly that in the US, drowning is the 2nd most common cause of death by accident for kids, after, you may have guessed it, car crashes. So if you're going for a swim next week, keep this in mind. Make sure that the water is safe, assume you are at best a mediocre swimmer, and you won't die. Also, for the love of God, be careful on cruise ships. If you go overboard, you have a 60% chance of dying. Let's move on to the thing that will kill the most people watching this video. This one is extremely sad and very delicate because sensationalist public discussion can make it worse. It's harming yourself. Statistically, about 10 of you could die this way next week. There's something that you might not be aware of that might save your life. The majority of these deaths happen in crisis situations, usually triggered by traumatic events and extraordinary circumstances that overwhelm people and undermine their coping strategies. Studies show that suicide rarely occurs out of the blue. There are warning signs, and often suicidal thoughts and feelings can be mastered by getting professional help, for example from a crisis intervention center. Most people who survive an attempt don't try again and end up being very glad that they did survive. It was just way too much for them, and they felt desperate and as if there was no way out. It would be so nice if someone watching this who's in a bad spot decides to get help. You matter, you really do, and the world is better with you in it. Please stay with us. If you currently feel overwhelmed by life, seeking help is not weakness, it's strength.
Facts.
We've put some resources for you in the video description. This also means another thing. If you have someone in your life going through a crisis, withdrawing, expressing hopelessness, or talking about this topic, even jokingly, take it seriously. Show them that they're loved and important.
Fact, that
You
shit's
personally
real.
could save a life, maybe next week already. You might
Needs to
never
be
know,
truth
but
in
worst
some
case,
jokes.
you've been a true friend. Now for the final thing, and to be honest, this will not save your life next week, but maybe this year. Cancer is sadly a real risk even for your age group and will kill 5 of you next week.
Yeah.
The most common being thyroid, breast, and testicular cancer. The author of this video had cancer at the age of 32. If he'd been aware of this risk and went to regular checkups, this could have been entirely avoided. So this is also a personal, heartfelt recommendation. We collected a few resources about screenings and self-checkups in our sources for you. Check them out. At least one type of cancer is almost entirely avoidable: melanoma or skin cancer. You might be surprised how deadly this is, but as a great philosopher said, the sun is a deadly laser. It's burning your skin with the energy released from trillions of tons of plasma. The solution couldn't be simpler. Use sunscreen. It's been a while, or you've been in the water. Cool. Apply it again.
That's a lot of plasma.
About 9 of you will die of melanoma in the next year, so sunscreen might save your life. Okay, let's wrap up. Just by being more aware and modifying your behavior a little bit, you personally could survive next week. Dozens of all of you watching right now. Hundreds of you this year. Hopefully, you'll be able to tell us stories in the next few years of situations that almost turned really bad, but didn't because you behaved differently. And if you have people in your life that do or don't do the things we talked about today, please send them this video. It might save their lives too. Life is just the best thing, and we hope to celebrate it together for as long as possible. If you needed a nudge to seize the day, this is it.
Hope you
Start
guys like
doing
that
the thing.
Found Nation. Like, comment,
You can
subscribe,
start
and
sharpening
share
your
the
mind
video
right
on
now
all social
in
media.
minutes a day
Comment
with our
below
friends at
what
Brilliant.
reaction you want to be
Brilliant will
next. And
make you
see
a
you
better
guys next
thinker
time.
and
I
problem
love you
solver
guys.
with
And
thousands
go
of
show the
interactive
channel
minds.
some love and go show check out the
Leaving you
sponsor. They sponsored by Brilliant Wonderful. And go and check the video out and show them some love.
Whatever
And
device you like.
love you
To
guys.
get
See you
hands
next
on
time.
with
I'm out.
kurzgesagt.